Hi, I'm Deb Miller, a psychic medium, bringing to you your metaphysical connection, where we strive to connect you to you and you to more through our shows and through events in the community and through the website, which is www.ymc-online.info. And you can send emails there, and hopefully I'll have it up to date with different things about who our guests are and links you can go to, looking at who's doing what in our Monadnock region and how we can learn more about things we might be curious about. So we have Skye Stevenson here again, and this time she's going to be talking about crystals and rocks and how they interact with our energetic lives. Would that be accurate?
Yeah, that would be. Thanks so much for inviting me for the second time.
This is great.
It's great to be on this show. You
Thanks.
do such a good job.
Well, it's fun.
Yeah.
People like you. Hi.
Hi, everybody.
So, you know, there are so many thoughts and ideas about rocks, and if they're just rocks, or if they have power, or do we have crystal in our brain, do we not? Why do people meditate with them? They could bring us to other places. They can, you know, transport us through wormholes. I don't know what. But people have some really strange ideas and some really powerful ideas. They pray with them. They avoid them because they think they're powerful and against their practices. So what's your take on all of this? Because you're the rock lady.
Well, I don't know about the rock lady. Maybe before anything, I don't know if you can pan to some of these beautiful rocks that I brought on the table here, just to give an idea of some of them. And if you can see the black hearts, I'm very excited because I just got these hearts from Mexico, from a jade carver named Aya, and they're Guatemalan black jade, which is some of the most sacred jade in the world, and it has been sacred for the Olmec, some of the first peoples in the Americas, for thousands of years. They say that,
jade.
yeah, they say that, or dark blue, and they say that, or jade of any type, that when the Spanish arrived, they were, the Indians were so surprised that they weren't asking for jade, and they were just asking for gold and silver, because for them, jade has a much more significant sacred nature and quality. So anyway, they're also present here with us, and I guess I just wanted to start by saying that I think we need to acknowledge that these and all the rocks and crystals in the earth that we stand on are all living beings, just as we're living beings. They're another kind of life form.
Skye, that sounds really flaky.
Well, but you know, when you think about how our current technological world is working, it's because of the power of rocks and crystals. So the most scientific of people, if you're on a computer, if you're having a laser work done, if you're using a cell phone, all of this is powered in part. Quartz rock. I mean, there's just so many, you know, any sort of material like that is because, in large part, of the mineral family, the stone family, whatever you want to call it. There are powers. Without quartz functioning the way it does, we wouldn't have a computer age right now.
But isn't it just used as a conductor at that point? And a conductor is different than calling it a living being.
Well, it depends on how we define life. I mean, if life is the fact that we all have energetic manifestations, we're all different kinds of energy, so everything around us is living and life, the stars and the moon and the planets. It's not just humans or even humans and animals. Then I think it is living form. And even some of the recent scientific evidence, if we want to go down the scientific path, which is one form of explaining things that has its own positive aspects and its own restrictions as well. But if we want to use scientific terminology, because that's kind of the religion of our current society, that's the most widely accepted, there's new evidence to show, first in the new physics, that everything is an energetic manifestation, you know, all life forms. In addition, if we look at the plant kingdom, there's a whole burgeoning field of neuro plant life, showing that plants actually are living beings that have and can emanate communication and messages among themselves. So, you know, there's a lot of changes that are going on recently in the world and in the scientific community that are sort of corroborating our millennial connection
So
with
that
rocks
these would
and
be some interesting
crystals.
things for people to Google.
Oh, sure.
Right? If they're
Definitely.
intrigued by some of the things we're talking about today, they could do a
Right.
Google search of
Right.
you know, the life of the secret life of rocks and plants.
Yeah,
Right?
definitely.
Or the scientific life of rocks and plants, and see what they come up with.
Sure. And even if, I mean, you know, if we want to look at what you would get in a geology 101 class, you know, what makes any member of the stone or rock family a stone or rock is their chemical composition and their structure. So if we look at the chemical composition of all stone and rocks, and remember that everything we walk on is basically, you know, our planet's called Earth because Earth is made up primarily of broken down rocks and crystals in different forms. But anyway, if we look at quartz, which I don't have here, but that's the most common structure, silica, on the Earth's surface, and it's also the basis of the computer circuits, as we know. You brought it up already. Silica has a precise chemical composition, and what's in silica is the same thing that's in our human body. I mean, we're about 85% water, but we know that we all have minerals that are suspended in the water, and in fact,
I've even read in our pineal gland that that we have crystalline properties in there, and that this is part of why people can connect and give themselves boosts with certain kinds of
and so part of that
crystals.
is through the actual trace minerals, where if you look at deficiencies, actually deficiencies in minerals is more serious for humans than deficiencies in vitamins. You know, if you're deficient in zinc, if you're deficient in iron, which is a kind of mineral, those of you who like rose quartz or know that pink color in rose quartz actually comes from iron that's in it. So, you know, we've got the chemical side of rocks and crystals, and the fact that we resonate with them because we have the same chemical composition spread out in a different way. And then on the other side, you also have the geometric structure, and that varies from crystal and rocks, etc. But all of them have a very precise geometric structure. Some of them are crystals, but even a stone like this that doesn't look like a crystal, that's a beautiful piece of jade, has its own very solid structure. And so that what you're talking about, the crystalline structure, is true. We also have that as well within ourselves, but to some extent stones and rocks are much purer manifestations of, you know, a very precise structure. So sometimes
they don't eat Cheetos. Right?
There you go. Well, they've been around for a really long time on Earth.
And some refer to them as the memory keepers.
Exactly.
Right? The oldest beings.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. And so, you know, we can also resonate and use and work with them. So that's kind of at a very scientific level. But I'd like to say that also, if you look at all of the great world traditions, or most of them, of religion and teachings, and if you go back to the beginnings of human records, where we see the very first spiritual questions or the cave paintings, etc., rocks and crystals have always been there. And in many of the great world's traditions, the center is really around a rock or crystal.
That they call an altar or something, but it's...
Right. Well, if you look at the Jewish tradition, you know, they have very sacred rocks and crystals, and they have in Jerusalem an important stone. I was just in Auschwitz at the concentration camps and saw left around there, you know, people had left small stones in memory of the people who had passed on in the Jewish tradition. If you look at Islam, the Mecca, the Kaaba, is around a black stone that's supposed to be a meteor, and that's the most sacred site for Muslims. And if you look even in Christianity, Pedro, St. Peter, actually means stone in Latin. And so when Jesus says, you know, you build your church upon, you know, Peter upon the stone, you know, they're literal and metaphorical interpretations, but within Christianity as well, you know, there are references to the the importance of stone or building and structure. So, and that's just within the biblical,
So
book of the Bible.
It's not just these yoga, freaky, metaphysical people that want to hum with their crystals.
Well,
it goes beyond that.
Well,
right.
As I said, I think most traditions do that.
I mean that
yeah.
lightly. I don't mean that in a way where just for the sake of our viewers, I'm not poking fun at anybody.
Right.
What I am is kind of pinching a stereotype when I say that. So that's as far as my interpretation.
Right. Well, I think that people who are watching this just have to ask themselves how they feel. I mean, we can talk scientifically, we can talk about traditions, but when we're really talking about metaphysical connections, we're talking about how we feel when we connect with something. Mm-hmm. I know most young children, when you see a young child, how often are they skipping along, picking up stones? So many people I know who I talk with about stones and crystals, they'll be like, well, I'm not really into crystals, but I have this stone collection, or I have this stone that I've carried since I was a child that I love, or whenever I go to the beach, I pick up stones.
Well, that's kind of what I mean. It's like there's this connotation of what crystals represent in terms of a culture of people, when actually that may not be accurate. Right? I mean,
to be honest, I think that I've been interested or got engaged with crystal work maybe about 7 years ago. I grew up in a family that was really interested in them, but more from a scientific standpoint. And even in the last few years, I've seen a real burgeoning of crystal work in a way that's exciting because people are waking up. But some of it I find a little distressing, and I feel a little uncomfortable with, to be honest. The kind of encyclopedia of you buy this crystal and it'll cure you of a certain illness, I don't think is always going to work, or maybe ever going to work.
You go into a shop and they have a collection of small polished stones, and then they have books next to it saying, choose this stone to cleanse you of this, or to encourage that. This is what you're talking about, as being a little maybe...
Right. Sometimes I've been seeing them in airports recently, where you'll go to airport stores.
Well, there's a lot of money to be made from selling little polished rocks.
Exactly.
What's the appeal, right? It's interesting.
Yeah, I mean, my personal take and experience, and why I brought sort of an interesting range of stones, is I think with any time you're talking about a metaphysical connection of any type, whether it's with another human, whether it's with animals, whether it's with plants, whether it's with stones, whether it's with the stars or the earth, I mean, they're all different life forms. It's the connection, the relationships, that's more important than anything else. And so just as the people who do plant healing say, you go out and you connect with the spirit of the plant and you get to know what the plant's about and work with it and ask its permission and get to know it as an entity. Or if you work with animals, you connect with the spirit of the dog or the cougar or whatever, and try to bring that within yourself and understand that better. Stones offer another option and possibility for doing that. That's complementary, because each type of life form on Earth has its own qualities.
I keep thinking while you're talking about what it's like when, if people are beach people, for example, you go and you really just crave feeling the sand in your feet, and it does something visceral to you. It just goes, which is more than just a tactile sense, right? It's like now you have all these broken down ancient pieces that have made sand, and you're feeling it. Right, and then you've got the influence of the water or whatever it is, but I think sometimes we just take things at surface value, and we don't take the other step of, well, if it's just a tactile experience, then I might as well just like rub a rock and I'll feel better, right? But if it's actually something more like a connection that you're talking about, then it's going to go that extra level of response, like a relationship. And then you have other people that are mountain people. Right? And they want to climb to the top of the mountain, and what do? They want to feel the giant stone beneath them.
Exactly.
So it's kind of interesting to see that there is a visceral drive that becomes quite emotional for people to get to certain places, for certain experiences, which are really relationships with those other beings that people feel funny calling water a being or rock a being or a tree a being, but nonetheless, the draw to them for each individual is different.
Right.
And based on their relationship, their emotional, spiritual
Definitely.
relationship with them. So that's
Yeah,
what I keep thinking while you're
yeah,
talking about all this science stuff.
Yeah, that's beautiful. And also to think that all of that's also within ourselves. I mean, we have
Exactly.
water within ourselves. We have, you know, the chemicals. We have crystalline structures. So all those are worlds outside and within ourselves. So that's a little bit about making that connection. And
Thich Nhat Hanh was talking recently. I was
Yeah.
listening to him talk about how he could see the cloud in his coffee, and that he could see the cloud in his ice cream, and he could see the cloud in you and the cloud in me.
Right.
And what he means is the water cycle,
Right.
right? And how through water,
Right.
we're all a part of each other. As we exhale, we're exhaling water. It goes,
Yeah.
it becomes a cloud. It comes back down. We drink it, and now what was once in me is in you, or in that rock, or in that
Right.
tree, or in my tea.
Right.
And that goes along with what you're saying,
Yeah,
too.
and to give an example, I don't know if the camera can show this, but this is
You can see.
yeah, this is a piece of jade that I actually was lucky enough to meet a man whose whole family works with jade in Ecuador. They do all the jade carvings, and I visited his house, and his whole backyard was full of rocks of jade that he had gone once a year, and they collect right at the edge of a stream and a mountain. Because a lot of the indigenous people in the world know that at places of intersection between elements, between water and earth, the ocean and the land, is a place of a lot of power. And we picked this out, and I've been working with it almost every day, like when I write or meditate. I use this stone. It's a little red because I actually pricked my finger and put a little bit of blood there. But this is just a sense of something that you wouldn't find in a store, and it doesn't look fancy or whatever, but we spent a really long time. This man, Luis, told me that he used to drink a lot, and when he began to work with stone, he's married and has a family, that the stone taught him to stop drinking, and that he found that when he came in the morning and began to work with jade, and he was not a very spiritual man a long time ago, that if he didn't have his heart in the right place, if he wasn't at peace, that all his machinery would break and he wasn't able to work with it. And that he had to center himself and make sure that he had a very pure intention before he began working with jade, and then the instruments wouldn't break. So he said that the jade taught him converted him
Yeah.
and opened up his heart. And the man who got these crystal hearts for me told me the same thing, that you have to be very clear in your intentions and work carefully with jade. And when I first began to do crystal work, it was because I got some information about jade. And so to show kind of a little bit, I don't know if we can show this, but the kind of relationship that I'm talking about, instead of buying 100 different stones, if you find a stone by a rock or a stream, or one stone that calls to you, and try to kind of connect and get to know it, it can be really powerful. So these are some cards. It took me about 2 years to get the single word and the message of jade. And so this is like in a meditation I did with, yeah.
There we go.
Yeah.
We're working out the camera.
Yeah,
angle to
that's
show
fine.
you, so.
And I just wanted to show, the pictures aren't great because I'm not a good artist, but that it took me about 2 years to really connect with the spirit of jade and learn what its message was for me.
Thanks, Rick.
And that's a message that could be different for somebody else, because we all are going to connect with different things differently. So my first one, you can see jade was connecting. I got the idea that it was about connecting. And sort of I saw an ephemeral sort of entity. And then the next thing I went in, I got a picture that was a little clearer, and I saw it was about bridging the divides. And I saw a key and a hand. And these were all just my way of conceptualizing what I was trying to understand of the power energies of jade. So then I did a little bit more work and came back to it again. I thought it was also maybe about the ancestors and legacy and all of that. And then I had a really powerful meditation where I saw an owl and jade and the stars. And this is over the course of about a year and a half. And then finally, I got this one where I saw an owl, but I saw really clearly the interweaving of the black and the green together in a very special shape, which, not being an artist, I couldn't connect with. And it was only after this that I read that jade has a unique structure unlike any other stone in that it's a lattice structure. And it creates a network that stretches out in all directions, and that it's, it's the only stone that has that. And I'm just showing this to say, this is a kind of relationship that I'm talking about where you connect and you get to know visually something that actually I later learned scientifically was true. And I think it shows that, there are ways of assessing or getting to know, whether it be metaphysically and or scientifically, you can come almost to the same place. And that's where I think we are in the world these days, which is a really exciting place to be, where a lot of the new science is corroborating what some of the spiritual traditions have said. And so, maybe that's part of our leap to our new consciousness is, integrating those two, because they're just different ways of trying to express reality.
Right. And there are no true absolutes.
Exactly. And as part of that, since I am a writer and that's my form of expression, as I was doing that, I was also trying to create a poem, because that's my way. That's what I do. And I have some text as well. I won't read, but this is the final poem I got when I finally was able to capture that image. That took a long time. And so I called it Jade. It says, "My name is Jade, and there are many kingdoms in which I reign. Even mighty rulers, they have used me to try their powers to maintain. But what I offer is so much grander than any political entity could be, for I encompass all domains that do exist and reveal more than you can possibly conceive. You see, I know how to bridge all the realms. Yes, the ancient ones knew of my feats. With me, you can connect with your ancestors or journey to the source of the universal heartbeat. To find out if it's true what you may already surmise, which is that you are a mere strand of a web that is infinite and wise, that connects all that exists with its pure light, radiant and white, that connects you and I with its starlight, which you see at night. And when you this universal truth assess, then you will be a wise one indeed. You will be a true master of the great truth, which hides within all of our actions and deeds, and waits patiently to be revealed by those who know the secret of the universal key. A secret so simple as to be almost trite, yet so powerful it connects all that can be. The key is simply recognizing that true mastery never involves levels or grades. It simply involves drawing upon the great infinite that resides in the recesses of each and every piece of jade." So that was kind of my learning and relating. That was my way of relating to that particular stone or a type of stone. But
I think my favorite part in that was referring to us as a single strand in the web.
Yeah.
Because you would think, oh well, what purpose is a single strand? I'm just this tiny little thing.
Oh.
But at the same time, it's each strand, if it's there, adds integrity, and if it's removed, degenerates it.
That's a nice way
so
of
it's,
looking at it.
it is kind of nice to see that the way you, pardon the pun, wove in, the connection to all things, using that as the base of it.
So that was just one example, but I guess what I wanted to say also is some of these stones are local stones. I have a stone here from Mount Monadnock, which is...
we love Mount Monadnock.
Which is, I'm not doing this very well. Sorry.
Where are we putting? Put it on
there
the
we go. Thanks. I'm making the camera.
No, you're doing great. Rick's keeping up with us really well.
Yeah.
Okay, so that was found on Mount Monadnock.
Mount Monadnock.
It almost looks a little like Mount Monadnock.
That's what I thought, and it's got the black and the white together,
exactly.
which I loved.
It's a little mini Monadnock.
Yeah.
Right there.
There you go.
Little mini Monadnock.
Right. And that isn't bought in any store. I just climbed up and saw it. I was like, wow, that's my little Mount Monadnock when I can't see it.
That's right.
Yeah.
And how many times do we do that? We go to a place and we say, oh, this stone is beautiful.
Exactly.
And it just feels right somehow. And you just know, I want to have it for my very own. And you bring it home with you.
Yeah. And this is a piece of fluorite from the mine in Westmoreland. That's one of the top fluorite mines in the world. And you know, you sometimes
Fluorite. That's a fairy stone.
It is. It's very. That's a good one to meditate with.
Is it? We're going to talk about that in a minute.
About synthesis, but you know, so we're really in a region that's connected with some incredibly powerful and beautiful stones. I mean, this fluorite mine, Mount Monadnock.
We think of granite and we think of mica.
Yeah.
Right, but I don't think they realize garnets. All the other things, garnets, fluorite.
Yeah.
What's that?
That's some more fluorite from the mine too. Yeah.
So this is.
And you might not buy it in the store.
More raw state?
Yep, but a friend of mine who went to the Weiss mine brought it for me, and I personally love these stones that aren't.
So is that just as raw as this?
Yep.
Like you're just
it's white and green
and
fluorite.
Yeah.
Huh. Yeah. So.
So let's talk about, like you were saying. Well, you're not so sure about finding a little polished rock and looking in a book and saying, okay, this will clear me from the negativity that I get from being around electronics all day, right? You're not so sure about that, but at the same time, you know that certain stones amplify certain properties or impart certain things. So where's the line, and what can stones really do in our lives?
Well, that's a great question, and I think the answer is one of the wonderful things about this time right now is for some people they might not have any special meaning, and for other people they might be really significant. I'm not at all dogmatic or saying to people, you know, you have to have a rock or rocks are the way to go. But I think for a lot of people that resonate with rocks, I want to affirm that they can find that connection within themselves. Just as the dream encyclopedias that might say a snake in a dream always means this, whereas a snake for you might have another meaning, I think that's the same with rocks. It's a good start for some people. And of course, you know, a rose quartz has a really different kind of energy than a piece of obsidian, and
so
I think
it's really
we can
fine-tuning
connect with
your
that.
senses, right?
I think it is.
Just like being able to taste something and know that there's a little bit of this herb and a little bit of that grain or whatever. And
yep. And I think it also varies from person to person, because I was thinking, you know, if we look at the plant kingdom, you know, we know that garlic's good for colds, you know, but I might not like garlic, or I might have a repulsion to it and you might like it. So I think there's also a personal relationship with that as well. You know, some herbs resonate better with some people than others, even for healing. So if you're asking the question, you know, in terms of a healing or what can a rock promise, I can't say you should connect with a rock to look for alleviating physical symptoms. Sometimes they might be able to help you, especially if you've worked or connected, or you'll have a crystal layout with a person who's trained in that area.
Well, that's the thing that's interesting that you point out that I think about too. Like sometimes people will go and they'll buy something and they'll say, oh, this is for protection, and then they bring it home and they walk around with it in their pocket and they think they're protected. But actually, it's not that simple, right? Because you have to actually develop that kind of relationship and intention with that piece and work with that, and then maybe it will act to enhance protective qualities or healing qualities. This is what you're saying.
I think so. Yeah, and that.
So in that sense, it could be a stick.
It could be, and again, there are people that resonate strongly with the energies of certain trees. I mean, my goodness.
But that's what I mean. That's exactly my point.
Yeah, exactly. And there are differences between stones and plants and animals. But again, they're all life forms. So, you know, the book that I wrote, which I'd like to share a little bit with you, has one of its main characters a black jade heart. And the main character is also called Jade, but I call it the Spirits of Jade. And when I think about it, the spirit part is actually more important than jade, because the great Edgar Cayce, who talked a lot about crystal healing and helped bring that into the U.S., he always said, in his readings, you know, you have to be careful to not make too material the message. The message is that stones are a harbor of spirit, just as plants and trees and animals and all life forms on earth, but it's not the stone itself that you're worshiping. It's the spirit that is within the stone. And so I think we need to be careful in our very materially oriented society that, as I said, with this burgeoning of people interested in rocks and crystals, you know, you see people selling them everywhere, you know, and
So be a little discerning.
Yeah, yeah, and more isn't always better either. You know, have a few or ones that you connect with, and it'll change with time. If you're drawn to rocks and crystals, you might find at one period in your life there's something that just calls to you, and that's great. Maybe it's
and if you learn about it, you may find out a little more about why it calls to you and how you're using it in your life.
Right.
Or you can just simply enjoy it and let it work its magic in a very subtle way.
Right. But one thing I did want to come back and say as we conclude this is, you talked when you discussed going to the beach about that sense of grounding. And one thing I do think that is so true about the rocks and crystal family, all of them, is that they really help to ground us to the earth, because they are from the earth, even more than plants and animals. And they're so stable. And, you know, a lot of us need grounding these days. We're in a society that focuses so much on our head. And a lot of times people who meditate, who are very spiritual, are some of the most ungrounded people, because they're always trying to reach up to the sky and out there. And, you know, what I learned from some of the crystal work I did and some of the teachers I've been lucky enough to have is that we have to stay equally grounded to the ground below us and the earth and the heavens above us, that we're right in the middle place. You know, that's what the cosmic tree is, you know, in so many places, is that's who we are, and we have to stay in our heart and in our mind, but we can be so spun out of things. So, for instance, for myself, by Thursday or Friday, when I've had a full day and almost week at work, you know, just connecting with a crystal or a rock, or feeling it on me or holding it, helps to sort of ground me and keep me from getting so stressed out. So,
you know what, I'm thinking again while we're talking about how people might think it's kind of flaky, you know, oh, we're involved with rocks, you know, I need to sit with my rock. But how is that any different than feeling emotionally stressed out and just knowing you need a shower?
Yep.
Because feeling that water washing over you just makes you feel washed and refreshed. Energetically, you come out feeling renewed. So this is really, that's okay in our culture, but somehow, you know, a rock or sitting with a tree might not be so easy to discuss, and allow yourself that connection or that relationship.
Well, it's funny you talked about taking a shower. You know, we were discussing ways of connecting, and, you know, to be honest, what I do a lot of times when I first get stones, or if I want to connect with them, it's not I only sit with them. I'll light a candle and I'll put them in front of my bath, and then I'll draw a beautiful bath, and I'll lie down and I'll look at the stone and maybe touch it a little bit or try to get its feeling or energy. So it's a complete and beautiful process. It's not either or, it's all of them together. Or you can, you know, use essential oils in a candle, or go outside and put them in the moon or the sun,
or in the earth itself.
In the earth itself. There's so many fun ways to charge and connect, and sort of you can get guidance. That's what I mean about the relationship. You can sort of begin to sense, oh, you know.
I'm often struck when I meet with people who have these kinds of practices. You know, I'm often thinking about the connections between what we think is normal and okay and what we think is weird. And sometimes when we stop and take a moment and really look at those two things, they're not so different. It's just a different language. It's just different stuff. But the process might be very similar in terms of how we connect spiritually, or how we ground, or how we refresh ourselves, or how we develop a relationship, or have a meditative or prayer practice. And there's really quite more overlap in the things we think are weird and okay than there is separation.
Yeah.
You know, if we just stop and allow ourselves to think outside the boxes.
Yeah, and one thing that I sense and feel really strongly is that these days more and more people are connecting with the stones and rocks, or feeling them in our culture, because in most cultures around the world they're a central part of their sacred practices. But in our culture these days, it's because the earth really needs it. We need to start listening more to the earth because of all the changes that are happening in our environment, climate change and development. So even in just small ways, you know, beginning to tune in a little bit more to whatever it is under our feet is a way of helping to heal just a little bit what's going on. And I personally think that, you know, all the life forms on the planet want to help our planet survive, and that maybe us humans alone can't do it. And
Well, certainly. You look at the way different plants
Right.
in marshes will filter and try to cleanse things, or
Right.
you know how different
Right.
places in nature respond to
Right.
natural disaster.
Right.
It's all about unified survival.
And one of the senses or messages I got in my spiritual practice with rocks is that there are people who are out protecting the trees, there are people out protecting the animals, but there's not really many people out there protecting the stones and the rocks, and that includes petroleum and gold mining and uranium mining and silver mining and all that stuff, the deep earth from excavation. And you know, they can have pain too. And we've seen some of the terrible pollution that happens when you know, mines are dug in polluted and open pit mining, and all of that's part of not respecting, you know, our stone family element.
And ultimately, it's not respecting ourselves and each other, because just like the cloud is in our ice cream and in each other, so too is the earth. I want to make sure that you have time to read your piece.
Oh, thank you.
And that would be the time.
Great.
Now.
Okay.
Do it.
Well, I wanted to share, this is one small stone called Andalusite. It's called the Andean cross. That it's got a small cross shape. You've started seeing it here in the US, and I spent quite a bit of time in Chile, and this story that I wrote that was inspired by Jade has a actual Chilean myth about the Andean cross in it. So I thought it'd be kind of fun, and this piece of Andean cross stone you can find. Do
you want to hold it up?
Yep, thank you. You can find loose in the along one particular river in the south of Chile. So this
just
is another
just
character.
Like
yep. Okay. Yep. Just along the river stream. So anyway, in this story, the middle part there down in Chile, and the woman has a stone like this, the main character, and doesn't really know very much about it. And so they're in a jewelry store, and the attendant comes up and asks if he could help. And she asks about a piece of jewelry or whatever. And he says, let me tell you the story about the Andean cross. So he began the story. And this is actually a true story from Chile. Once upon a time, when the Mapuche, which were the indigenous people in Chile, ruled all of southern Chile and Argentina, there was a strong and brave warrior. He captured a young Spanish woman in a raid and brought her back to his community. And as they got to know each other, little by little, they fell in love. The problem was that the other members of the community were not happy that one of their people had fallen in love with a white woman. And so one day, some of his own people took him to a cave far away from the village and tied him up. They told him that they would keep him there until he agreed to leave the white woman, but he wouldn't do that. At the same time, they went to the Spanish woman and told her that her lover had gone to battle and been killed by the bank of the river Lariquet. It almost sounds like a Romeo and Juliet, Sarita said, who's one of the characters in the story. A Chilean version, the storyteller agreed. Anyway, when the Spanish woman heard this, she became so distraught that she fled the community and began to search high and low for the place where her lover had died. And as she wandered, she cried and prayed for a miracle. According to the story, Mother Earth took pity on the two lovers and transformed each of the Spanish woman's tears into a piedra cruz stone, the one I just showed you. And when the Indians saw this miracle, they released the captive Toki, the warrior, and they lived happily ever after. So that's just one small story of so many legends and myths around the world that in some way revolve around stones and crystals. So to finish up, I would just suggest that if you're at all drawn to stones and crystals, maybe you find one particular piece that has meaning to you and hold it in your left hand and thank it, you know, with gratitude, and ask it if it has anything to tell you. And you might want to wash it a little bit with some water or leave it out under the in the elements or whatever. But sometimes just coming with an open heart and thanking it, and then beginning to work with it in different ways can be really, really beautiful. I think gratitude and intention is one of the messages that we've come out with this whole discussion is, you know, what's the intention and the purpose that you bring to a relationship with a stone, just like any kind of relationship you enter into. So, yeah.
Yeah, and to just piggyback off of that as an exercise for people is to think about any stones they may have already collected and been drawn to. You know, I went to this mountain and I brought back this rock, or we had this great date there and I took this rock, or someone passed away and I want to give them this rock. And, you know, these different things, maybe to stop and sit with your inner self and just ask, gee, why would rock be so significant to me? What does it actually stand for symbolically to my emotional and spiritual state?
That's nice, and to feel free to know that each of us has the ability to connect with it,
with nature,
with nature, because it's a form, it's a part of nature,
which is a part of us.
Exactly.
Oh my gosh.
There you go.
So once again, thank you for coming.
Thank you for the invitation.
You're going to be at Muse in Marlborough very soon, talking about your book.
Right, and then it'll be that'll be on December 11th. We're having a book launch, and then it's going to be available in local bookstores. It's already on Amazon.com, and it's available in a Kindle format. It's on Smashwords as ebook as well.
Very
in
nice.
Various formats.
Well, I wish it much success.
Thank you so much.
Thanks
for the invitation.
This is great. And so until next time, be bold, be curious, be yourself, and be connected. Bye.